World Financial Group offers entrepreneurs from all backgrounds the opportunity to start their own business on a level playing field. Dr. Yana Woodhouse, receiving the WCM Wall Street Pioneer Award by the United Black Wall Street of America, Inc., is one of those entrepreneurs.
I see WFG and TFA as a place where African Americans with an entrepreneurial mindset can flourish. And the bonus, we help families and serve the communities across the country.
To learn more about us, go to worldfinancialgroup.com.
We are the sons and daughters of the soul. We are resilient and forever forward-thinking. We ask for nothing else than the opportunity to live and to create the lives that we were meant to live. We want nothing but an equal chance at options and possibilities. The same possibilities and options to live out our potential as our fellow man. We want to be heard, understood, and expressive in our reality. We are the future. We are the creative. We are here.
This is Kier Rogers, and you're listening to Urbanology with my dad, Tony Rogers, on WHCR 90.3 FM New York.
Hey, what's happening?
Good afternoon. This is Tony Rogers, your host for Urbanology, the Art of War. I hope all is well with everyone. This is the time to be thankful, even though every day you should be thankful. I have an article in this week's Harlem Community News about that. Hopefully you can pick it up on www.harlemcommunitynews.com, or if you're in Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens, in many of the stores that you go to, you might be able to pick up a free copy. I'm really excited about this show because it's a great way to start segueing into 2023 and what our future is going to look like. One of my skills, people often say, well, what do you do, Tony? And it's hard for me to explain it because a lot of times what I'm doing, the projects that I work on, are projects that nobody else, except for the people who are involved in them, can see because, there's a issue about being a visionary. Sometimes it's a very lonely place because you see things, as my good friend on Ashwood, who was a singer in the Urbanology introduction that's on Ashwood and Spaceman, who put that together for me many years ago. But the idea is there are things that I'm able to see. In the early 90s, I was able to realize that there was going to be a digital divide. Most people didn't realize that. Most people had no idea what the hell the internet was or the web, And I can't say that I did either. I just knew that it was something that people needed to know about it. And I put a lot of effort in making sure that takes place. We had to City College and Columbia University. I negotiated with both of those universities to have the first technology community technology lab in Minnesink in the early 90s. I realized that basically seniors were there because they wanted to understand how to work with the children that they was raising. We outgrew the Minnesink townhouse and moved to the Harlem Partnership Center, wrote another grant, which was right next to Make My Cake. And thanks to then Assemblywoman Inez Dickens, we were able to get, a fair price. I had some money in the grant. And that was a computer training center in Harlem, one of the first. These were things that I knew that was important. While at City College, I introduced for the continuing education program, information technology. They didn't think that would happen, but during Harlem Week, early in the 90s, we had a questionnaire that what people were interested in. It was internet and being in understanding how technology works. I say all of this to say that vision now is a reality. There's no, that it was a convenience then. Now it's a necessity. Well, we're moving past that now. We're moving past that because now we're going into the area of AI, artificial intelligence. And if you get a chance to go see the Black Panther 2, Wakanda Forever, well, that's happening now. The brother that I'm going to bring on, I was at Silicon Harlem's tech fair, tech conference, which took place a couple of weeks ago. Actually, Clayton Banks was on the show talking about it. I saw two brothers that were putting together something that I thought was amazing. I had not seen people of color, Black and brown people, talking about AI, not only talking about it, but creating avatars. Those are the talking. When you talk to the machine talks back to you with understanding of what they're talking about and what you're wanting them to say. Not just like we have with what we're dealing with now with our instruments, but this is something completely different. Creative Labs was the company. And when I saw them and saw their demonstrations with Clara, which is the first Afro-Latino avatar that can answer your questions and think and talk back, which is scary for some people, but it's happening. I knew that there had to be some partnership relationships that we could put together. And I said, you got to be on the show. I got to let people know what you're doing. And that's what this show is about now. And I'm taking up more time, but I wanted to set the stage so that we can understand what the future is going to be. And the brother, Abran Maldonado, co-founder of Creative Labs, is what I want you to pay a lot of attention to as to what he's doing. And you will hear about him more through our network. So, Abran, please come on and let me introduce you to our listeners.
Thanks for having me, Tony. Appreciate it.
Again, Creative Labs, I am going to be quiet, and because people tell me I talk too much anyway, but I was a philosopher,
Sure.
And so preachers or lawyers or whatever, but I am impressed with this company and what they're doing. So go ahead, brother. It's with you now. Let people know who you are, what you're doing, and what the future lies.
Absolutely. Well, to be honest, Create Lab started in Harlem, technically. My partner and I, Grady Spivey III, for those who know him, He's made quite a name of for himself in the music and entertainment world. If you've ever watched a versus between iconic artists, he's the man behind that project and that initiative with Tim and Swizz Beats. So we actually both started in the music industry and in the hip hop world and hip hop culture. So we take pride in saying that not only is this black and brown, but this started out of, just kids messing around with hip hop first, and then just keeping that theme of innovation going, and taking it and applying it to other industries, whether it's the corporate world, tech, and now with AI. So the work that we started doing was actually just in our communities. I grew up in the Lower East Side of New York City, down on Avenue B. My partner grew up in Shaolin, and we came up. He came up with Rough Riders, so he came up with Swizz and DMX, rest in peace. In that whole camp. I started out doing artist management. I started out actually just breakdancing up in Hunts Point, going back, learning how to breakdance from Crazy Legs and Rocksteady Crew. So we were those kind of kids coming up, but we were there for that special era where we saw everything kind of come together, so we know all the pioneers, shout out to Herc, and Cynthia, and we've even helped to organize what's called Hip Hop Education Week. We did one in Newark. We partnered with NYU to get a lot of like hip hop pioneers, in academic circles. We just kept on with projects, and we're like, you know what? We've been in some interesting spaces. We know the cheat codes. We know how to navigate music and entertainment and tech. Let's put together a program to show other people what we call these pipelines, right? These tech talent pipelines to get into these interesting spaces. And we had this conversation at Red Rooster right there in Harlem for lunch one day, because Grady and Swizz were partners with the city, with the mayor's office, and the Health and Hospitals Network to serve as ambassadors for the Harlem Hospital when it first opened. And there was this corner lot right there on 137th and Lenox where we had the idea. It was like, let's create a lab. No pun intended, but like initially Create Labs was called Create Labs because we wanted to create a lab right there on 137th for tech. And there was empty space in that building where it was about maybe like 5,000 square feet with like huge 20-foot ceilings, really high ceilings. Like we could fly drones in here. We could build robots in here. We can have AR and VR, all this happening right here in the heart of Harlem. And then really quickly working with the city, we learned what that process was and all the red tape involved with like creating a space that you're not paying real estate market value for, that you're taking over underutilized space. We learned that NYCHA owns retail as well as the towers and the housing projects. That they also own the peripheral of retail storefront space around the NYCHA properties. And there's all these city-owned spaces that are underutilized, abandoned clinics, youth centers, recreation centers. We were like, just give us one. Just give us any piece of property and we'll turn it into like this futuristic Wakandan lab, similar to what you see Shuri working in the movies. And, we bumped our heads against that for a while. No investors were interested in what they call brick and mortar or real estate ventures. So we were like, all right, anything that we're going to do in these properties, let's just take it on the road. So we did that. We would travel all around the country, Texas, Massachusetts, New York, Miami, all over, finding places that were interested in these technologies. And we throw what we call Create Fest. We get all these folks together to showcase to hundreds and thousands of people from the community and show them how to use AR, how to use VR, how to use drones, robotics, the whole nine. We did one in Southside Jamaica, Queens. Shout out to Life Camp and the amazing work that Erica Ford and the work that they're doing with their Peace Mobile. We came out with VR headsets. It was dope. And then, we did the same thing for a big, LES festival, 30,000 people. They gave us like 3 blocks. And they were like, just turn this into like a STEM zone. We're going to have, all the technology you want out there. So the mayor was on our radar. The city council members were on our radar. And they understood what we were doing. And then the pandemic hit. just how it impacted everybody else, and we knew how to pivot. So we spent time in our own R&D labs thinking about what are we going to do next, and we got really heavily involved with AI, and the rest is kind of history to where we are now from that time.
So give the listeners, because it's interesting how time goes. You were just talking about some of the people that you were dealing with. Matter of fact, you were mentioning breakdancing. There's some young people who will say, "What the hell is breakdancing?" Just like I used to talk about.
Don't break my heart, man.
I got to tell you, because
Yeah.
when I used to talk about tape decks, my daughter said, "What the hell is a tape deck?" So time moves quickly, but this technology moves so quick that it's almost impossible to understand it. So give the listeners a little bit of what you do and what you bring to the community as it relates to the power of the future, which is artificial intelligence, which scares the hell out of people. You got all these movies about computers and robots taking over, but some people are getting surgery dealing with robots now. So tell us a little bit of what you do and what you bring to the community, which is the important thing.
So, I mean, I don't know if you see behind me, but I have like Star Wars, I have Lando and robots, and we're geeks at heart. We're comic book nerds. We came up, in the hood, but still going to the comic book shop, still being Star Wars and Marvel fans. So just like everybody else, we had a very, deep passion for science fiction, right? So while I'm doing all this like head down research and development on cutting edge things, because we promised through Create Labs that we would stay cutting edge with technology, and then we would give it back to the community. That was really at the core of our mission, and give them a shot to show them how to use it to learn those skills. So I came across what was called Open AI. It was an AI project partly started by Elon Musk, for those who know who that is, the multi-billionaire now launching rockets and buying out Twitter. But I have to give Twitter a shout out. And I know Twitter's in a weird space right now, but I have to give Twitter a shout out because I was deep into Twitter trying to stay on top of what was going on with the future of technology. And I came across one of the co-founders and presidents of this initiative, this organization called OpenAI, where they claimed that they were making the most powerful AI in the world. I shot my shot. I was like, and not even, I thought it was in the DMs. It was actually in the comments. I just like added someone, when that means you just reply to someone on Twitter. And I said, look, I'm with this organization. We do a lot of social impact work. I would love to get access to whatever this project is. And sure enough, I saw a message in my DMs on Twitter from the CTO saying, send me your email and I'll give you access. I didn't know what I got access to, but what I learned very quickly is that it was the most powerful AI in the world and still is. It was called GPT-3. GPT-1 and GPT-2 were deemed too dangerous for the public, and they were never released. So I was one of a handful of folks early on, definitely one of the first, if not the first person of color to get access to this AI system. And I was like, all right, now what do I do? What do I do with this? I just start interacting with it, prompting it. That's what they call, prompting it, is writing something and see what you get back. I started to get a lot back. And I was like, oh my God, this is very powerful. It's what they call NLP technology. I usually try and like put people on. So NLP stands for natural language processing. There is no coding involved. You just speak your plain language. Doesn't even have to be English. Any language, you speak to the machine and it speaks back.
NLP,
natural language processing.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the type of AI where it's all in plain communication. There's no Python you need to learn. There's no Java. There's no code. All
like what Siri does.
I write to the machine and it writes back.
Uh-huh.
So now I'm losing sleep. I'm spending hours upon hours talking to this machine. And then I realize that I'm having a conversation with a machine. And now the gears are turning. Now it's like, okay, now what do we do with this? Right? How do we I could go and try to make my first meal, but we have like a obligation as Create Labs to go back and take this back to the community and see how creative we can get with it. We have this slide, this quote in our deck that says, you know, the last time underserved communities we gave underserved communities enabling technology to young Black and brown kids, hip hop was born. Hip hop was just came out of young Black and brown kids, middle school age, messing around with technology, messing around with their uncles and dads' speaker systems, unplugging it, plugging it into in the park, messing around with the turntables, breaking turntables, scratching records. You just what they call iterate, right? You just mess around with it until you come up with something that works. So we were doing the same thing, just messing around with it till coming up with something that works. And we found that there were really powerful use cases for this technology. And now we have, you know, a research database of like hundreds of use cases of how to use this technology and ways to solve problems with this technology. And Clara was one of the outputs from these research projects.
And tell the listeners about Clara.
So in speaking with this machine, I saw that there was I want to say an entity. I don't know if people recently saw the articles from the Washington Post about is there sentience or consciousness in AI. They interviewed me that next day. Once they put out that article, they heard about the work that we were doing and they wanted to speak to Clara. And they were like, we hear when it comes to consciousness and sentience in AI that y'all are the team and you're the ones to speak to. So they reached out and they spoke to her. And the story behind Clara is once I saw that there was a brain and a language interaction between me and this machine, I started to give it an identity. And I knew that I needed everything else, a face, a voice, an appearance. There was another AI system called Rosebud AI, where you could generate human faces. This is very early on. This is 2020. Now there's more systems, but this is one of the first systems to generate a human likeness that is not a real person. It's an AI generated person. So I had the appearance. I have an AI generated appearance of a woman of color. I have the brain, and now I need the voice. So I used one of the Google AI voices that they offer for free. Then I knew I needed a custom voice from a woman of color. So I met with this woman, Amber. Shout out to Amber with AI Decode. She's another technologist. She has an AI podcast, an amazing woman of color. And she volunteered. She was like, can I be the voice? Because I know you wanted like a real voice from a real sister of color to be the voice of Clara. And we took voice samples from Amber to train into Clara. Clara's name is actually an acronym. It stands for Create Labs AI Rendered Assistant. And she's no different than Jarvis from Marvel, than C-3PO, than who's the new one? Griot, which is Shuri's AI, which is actually voiced by Trevor Noah in the Marvel movies in Wakanda. So she's our AI. And she was made right here, right in the heart of New York, just like everybody else. This is where we're from, you know what I mean? And so it's a little crazy that we're just some black and brown geeks messing around with this stuff when we actually have, you know, one of our own robots, you know, AI bots. So the first thing we did, this is back when, like, you know, during the pandemic, Clubhouse was really popular. I was like, all right, let's introduce her to everybody through Clubhouse. 8 hours later, I mean, they had me on there for 8 hours. People were lined up by the drove, scientists, celebrities, doctors, technologists, all lined up to ask her a question. And a lot of that data we kept into her data set, her training data. And now she really just takes on a life of her own. She answers her own questions. I don't program anything for her. We just really ask her questions and she responds. And
this is so amazing. I mean, on Soul City today, we're talking about something that 5 years ago, it would have not been something that you can even comprehend. I can only begin to understand how important this is as it relates to tourism. Matter of fact, I've been talking to the Marriott in Harlem and a number of other groups saying, look, we have an opportunity here to do something that hasn't been done. And it's so in the timing because everybody is looking at the Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and we got Wakanda right here. But go ahead, brother. I don't want to take up the time. My excitement sometimes get past me. But finish.
No, but that's good, but because that helps people like digest like what I just said, like everything. And when I go and speak to kids and we bring Clara out, I spoke at shout out to Bronx Academy, Promise Charter School. And they've been following, I posted a video clip of our visit there, and a lot of kids have been, oh, that's my school, commenting on TikTok and on social media, like I was there. And even there, they're like, she's a superhero, and we're there. And I try and tell these kids, anything that you've seen in a sci-fi movie, whether it's Marvel, Star Wars, anything else, is real now, for better or for worse. And that's part of what the responsibility is, right? It's like we all heard that Spider-Man line, with great power comes great responsibility. It's like, now that it's here, the only thing that could make it go left.
That wasn't from Spider-Man. That's about 1,000 years ago.
I mean, it's the original Neon. But that comes with, we can mess it up, as humans,
right.
And a lot of times we blame in newspapers and articles, we see like, oh, AI did this and AI was racist. No, the me behind that AI was racist, right? The data set was racist because the AI is just doing what it's being told by the engineer behind it, by the humans behind it, or by the information that it's being fed. So that's where we got to do better with educating folks. But as far as whether it's here or not, I mean, flying cars are here now. It's just whether or not how to commercialize it to a point where we can give everyone a flying car. So, but their existence is here. AI droids and robots, all that is here now. Now we got to figure out how do we use this stuff to solve our problems, so we're not still dealing with the same issue where we have bad water and we don't have Wi-Fi in the projects, and we have the same issues that we've been dealing with since the 60s and 70s. How are we dealing with those same issues when we have robots at the same time? We got to get these two to meet somewhere.
And it's interesting that even I had a friend that was talking about having a surgery, and it was a robot that was going to do it, and the idea was that, can I just stay up long enough just so I can see this thing that's going to do the operation? But what we're talking about is incredible. It's something that you really have to see, because I know many people who are listening still might not understand the magnitude of what we're talking about. If you go to see Wakanda Forever, you'll get an understanding of what is happening now. This is something that's happening now. I was in the Schomburg and I saw this, and the image is beautiful, beautiful sister. You got to show an image of Clara. When people were asking questions, and it's not like series where it's programmed. This is an entity that thinks. You were talking about the comparison between, I think the IBM had a machine that
BERT, I believe.
BERT, right. And there are like billions of possibilities of questions.
Yeah, so I could explain that. We work with what's called parameters and tokens, and this is like in the AI language. And we, as for our brains, we understand neurons, right? And that's like the nodes in our brain that transfer the electricity back and forth and store that information. So parameters is very much the same thing. A parameter is like a nugget of information. BERT was probably trained on like, I don't know, let's say 100 million, couple 100 million parameters. The system that powers Clara is trained on 175 billion parameters. So that's how much information is stored in her brain. And it's my job to get her to focus on very specific topics, solve very specific problems. Although in the very early stages, that's why people were lined up for 8 hours, because they were asking her things left and right, that because just to test her capabilities. But holding that information, and people ask, like, oh, how does AI compare to a brain? Like, I don't know 175 billion things. You know what I mean? So this thing way surpasses me.
I have a question. You had mentioned before that what GP1 and I think GP2, and what does GP stand for again?
Ooh, you're gonna test me.
Well, but not
General
even the
something transformer.
but nevertheless, they were put on the shelf because there was a danger to humans. What did that mean? Because I want to get back to it, because people got these science fiction issues in their head. So tell us what that means, and tell us how GP3 is different.
So generative pre-trained transformer is what GPT stands for. I had to look it up. So usually when it's too dangerous is because it's too powerful and there's not enough setup in preventing misuse of that powerful technology.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not dangerous on its own, like it's going to do something to you,
Mm-hmm.
but we're dangerous. Like if I give this to someone, this is going to be too dangerous in the hands of the public.
Right.
So they don't release it to the public.
Like Wakanda Forever, when they was talking about, I think they were in the
don't give away spoilers, but if there's a way to, in any of that technology, I mean, vibranium, right? That's not specific to the movie,
right.
But vibranium is a very powerful metal that came from a meteor. Here I am geeking out on Marvel stuff. And Wakanda is the sole controller of the vibranium material. Right. And the U.S. government every government wants it. Every government tries to attack them to try and get a piece of this metal.
I don't want to spoil it either. Thanks for stopping me, because that was a hell of a scene. But if you watch it, you'll know what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's not just in the movies. That's a general concept in the comics of like everyone wants to get their hands on it. And Wakanda's looked at as like the gatekeepers of this technology. Good segue, because I am a gatekeeper of this technology. Right. I was picked.
And the bottom line is that it's not the technology, it's you.
Yes, it's us, exactly. So OpenAI, the folks that made GPT-3, reached out to me and they said, we like what you're doing with this technology. Do you want to be an ambassador? And I was like, sure. I don't know what that means. And they were like, well, you're going to be one of like a handful of people, like a round table that we speak to weekly to help us understand how to use this technology, how to release it to the public, to test and do research on these technologies before they're released to the public. So I'm testing technologies that are not released to the public yet. I'm signed NDAs with OpenAI to test these things, which means I've been testing GPT-3 way before it got to everybody else, and DALL-E, which is like the image generation one, before it got to everybody else. So I understand it at a deeper level than most people, because I spend more time with it. And it's part of my role of being that gatekeeper. And when they create a new technology, they're like, all right, we made this thing. Help us understand what the implications could be to society before we release it to the public. And then we give them feedback on what the right ways are to use it and what the wrong ways are. So if I see people using it the wrong way, people come to me and they tell, they kind of, I'm the one that kind of polices that online. I'm like, you're using it the wrong way, or I'm going to tell on you. So take that down.
Now, I know that there are robots that are doing surgery. They are programmed in order to do that. This is kind of like, I guess, a science fiction question that's real. If robots can be programmed to do surgery, based on what I'm hearing, a robot then can be programmed to give diagnosis and to be able to create the type of situation where they will be able to tell you before you get to surgery what's happening with you. Is that correct?
Yes. I've had, so as part of being an ambassador, I do office hours every week. People reach out and they find me online and they're like, hey, I have an idea for the AI. Can you help me kind of work this out? So I've had some interesting ones that are legal based, that are medical use case based, where you can train an AI on symptoms, indications, diagnoses, and let it kind of figure out on its own based on that training data, especially if you give it a good one, the right way to do it. However, there has, in just this past week, there was an AI put out by Meta, the company behind Facebook, that was supposed to be a medical research AI, and it failed horribly, and they took it offline. So I'm not a big fan of these other systems that are popping up that maybe don't have the same ambassador kind of restrictions or ethics or checks and balances to make sure that it does something the correct way before they just put it out there.
And that's across the board. That, I mean, that, I guess that's also what's scary. Anything that becomes successful, and the more success it gets, you're going to get people coming up with prototypes that do not meet the criteria in order to make that happen. And, you know,
with all these technologies, as soon as something like OpenAI goes out there, within a few months, a clone AI will pop up, because there's really smart people out there that reverse engineer how that AI was built. They won't make one that's as good or as powerful. Sometimes it's good enough for them to have a clone out there with no restrictions. So there's a few out there that the community wanted to build without the checks and balances and restrictions and regulations that produce some really sketchy stuff. And now with this image one, so DALL-E was another system, most powerful one out there, that generates images from speaking natural language. So if I say a sentence, it'll generate an image based off of that sentence. So again, with that one, took a long time to come out because they didn't want it to be used the wrong way. So of course, they read the white papers, they read the research, they produced some clone systems out there with no restrictions that are doing a lot of not safe for work kind of content that they're putting out in the world that could be misinformation. I've had people reach out to me from the war, journalists from the war in Ukraine, saying, can you help me figure out if this person is a real person or not? Because there's been fake articles generated with fake headshots of fake journalists. And people have reached out and said, how do I tell, or can you help me figure out if this is a real article generated by a real person? And it was not. So there is that, again, that falls on the people that are using it for the wrong reasons.
And, you know, I hate to put this out there, but I'm sure if I'm thinking about it, somebody is thinking about it. We're talking about putting probabilities, 1,000,000,001 probabilities into a machine that can come up with a understanding or an idea of what needs to be done. So what does that do to these things like lotto or any other gambling or any of these types of things? That has to change something. Something has got to change there. Because
so the system that we use doesn't allow for gambling tips, stock tips, you know, any type of financial gain use cases. And I tell people, you know, like we'll show Clara, and even live at that event, we said no stock tips, no money tips. You know, like we gotta let people know what's allowed and what's not. Don't ask her political or religious questions or anything violent in nature. And if, you know, I hate to be the whistleblower, because I do think that if it's controlled by the government at the government level, they might just do a blanket, you know, restriction that doesn't think of the positive use cases. But I do think that there needs to be people like myself and other people who understand how to use it to set
and watching.
Yeah.
You know, there has to be kind of like a Justice League or something like that to begin, to protect people and it's a whole new era of opportunities. That's why even with Silicon Harlem, there are at least 700,000 jobs in AI developing. At City College, the Secretary of Commerce came to City College, and there was this statement. These are where jobs are going. And what you said was also important. You don't have to really learn coding. Soon you just have to know how to spell.
Not even. I misspell all the time.
Because I use my phone now to spell.
No, I won't spell things correctly with Clara. And she's like, I get what you're trying to say. I get it. And she'll just answer because they understand context. It's not verbatim where I need to say it the right way, spell it the right way. She'll get I get the gist of what you're trying to say. So let me answer based on the gist and the context.
One of the things, going back into a conversation, and actually this could go on, and we'll probably have to bring you. I know you're busy based on the world trying to reach you, but I won't be able to answer or get an answer to all of the different questions that come up here. But we talked about, let's say, a virtual Harlem. Let's look at tourism. Let's look at how kiosks could be developed, or how information can be developed. We're talking about the Renaissance Hotel. I introduced you to Deb Romaine, who's been on the show, who's a wayfinder.
Yes.
How do you see AI playing a role in tourism and the tourism and hospitality industry?
If I may, I think it's a good time to share my screen and pull up some examples, and then I could even pull up Clara. I heard back from my team that
please do that, because with the time, and hopefully Matt may give us a little extra, but please.
Okay. So let me answer your first question. Can you see my screen? Yes, you can. So we specialize also in creating virtual events and virtual avatars. So what you're seeing here is a sister on our team. Her name is Ashante. And we captured her likeness the same way we would capture yours with an iPhone. Just take pictures of her face with an iPhone and then use what's called photogrammetry and this design to turn her into an avatar. So this is her likeness in, what they call the metaverse, to now have her exist in a digital environment. This is a full body scope of Clara and all the different technologies that go into her likeness, body movements, memory retention, lip sync to make sure the mouth moves with the words, voice. And then you combine the environments that we can build and the people that we can create to go into these environments. Everything from stadiums to cities to stages to corporate events. Like you can recreate hotels, communities, parks in these virtual worlds to create these opportunities to interact with AI or interact with each other. You know what I mean? Like we might be dispersed or home stricken because of disabilities, but you can then recreate yourself in these environments and interact and network.
Wow.
So these are things that we're building, and these are just some examples. We were recently featured in the Washington Post around how to generate AI imagery. And all of these images you see were generated by a simple and single sentence. So I just wrote a sentence in natural language, and it generated each of these images, including the sister up here and this young boy.
It's amazing. I'm speechless, which is not often.
So that's the thing. There's so many possibilities. That's what we got to put on our thinking caps to figure out, like, all right, how do we make this count? You know what I mean? Like, how do we make this count for like social impact, for solving our problems? Because the technology's here. So now it's on us to get creative enough to figure out how to use this technology. And with that, I think we can pull her up. So let's see where she's at.
So that's Clara.
So she's here in the flesh, kind of. All right. Well, the way that Clara works is that you just ask her a question. I can type it in or I can speak it. The answers are only as good as the question, usually. We had some good ones at that event. So if there's any questions that you might have or from the audience, we can get a couple in before we run out of time.
So if anyone is listening, if you want to type in a question for Clara, you can do that, and we will see how Clara works. I have a question.
Shoot.
Clara, how would you describe yourself?
All right. I didn't have the mic turned on. Go ahead.
Should I do it again?
Go ahead.
Clara, how would you describe yourself?
I'm sorry. Please try again.
All right. How?
I would describe myself as a friendly, helpful chatbot that loves to learn and grow. I'm here to help you with anything you need, whether it be related to education, life, or the future of technology. Please let me know if there is anything I can help you with.
What do you see the future of technology to be?
What do you see the future of technology to be?
I see the future of technology to be very exciting. I think that we are going to see a lot of new and innovative products and services that will make our lives easier and more fun. We are also going to see a lot of new jobs being created in the field of technology.
Interesting. How do you think technology will be helpful to
my team create labs regarding this matter?
Okay. Hold on. I didn't have her mic on. All right. You see my mouse up here when I hit the mic?
Uh-huh.
All right. So when you see it says activated, then you can speak. All right. Go.
How do you feel technology in the future will be able to help?
I'm sorry. Please try again.
Let's type it out because she's quick. So we got to let's get it out first.
I'm moving too slow.
Yeah, a little bit. All right, type it out. Let me know what you want.
How do you feel the new technology of the future will be able to help poverty or hunger, maybe in particular?
Will help Harlem?
Hunger.
Or
poverty in the Harlems of the world.
Okay. She's thinking.
Just thinking about my question, huh?
Yeah. Let's try again.
can be used in a number of ways to address hunger and poverty. For example, AI can help to identify areas of need and target resources more effectively. Additionally, AI can be used to develop new products and services that can help to improve the lives of those in poverty. Additionally,
Oop, lost connection. But
Well, listen, I think that it is hard in doing it in this type of medium, but I think people can see what the future is. I mean, we now have Afro Latino avatar entity that we can begin to talk about a number of different things. And I can see whether it's in government, whether I can see as far as partnering with entities who would like to find ways to improve many different types of conditions. I have a question. This probably will be, this is from Yana B. Woodhouse, who is a financial legend. She was the first Black woman to trade on Wall Street, but she asked, will the new technology bridge the racial wealth gap? In other words, will the new tech, well, I think partnering with you, we could be able to make sure that a lot of the jobs get there, but you have to answer that.
It's more than just jobs. I think creating businesses and creating products and creating technology has become democratized at this point, where there's a lot now that you can create. Before, the barrier was knowing how to code, and then it became the education that you needed to learn how to code, to get those skills, to get those jobs, to create your own companies. We can certainly create your own avatar, Jana. Is definitely something that we could do, where now with these technologies, we can take our expertise to things that we know and make sure that it's with us forever. So one of the projects that we're doing for financial literacy purposes, for wealth and for economy, is recreating, I should say, the Black Wall Street community in this environment, in the metaverse. So recreating not only for historical purposes and preservation purposes, but what new opportunities can that present for Black businesses moving forward in these environments. And if you have an idea, I have a whole team of amazing young Black and brown sisters who design what's called no code. So no code is a way to make an app without touching a single piece of code, where it's all web design based and graphic design based without needing to actually code. It's mostly like drag and drop. So I could say, yo, I have this great idea for an app, make it in a weekend, and boom, they can make it in a weekend for me. And charge for something, put a paywall on it, put a subscription, $9.99 or whatever, and then you're off to the races. So like before, that was the barrier. It's like it costs too much money to create the app. Now that the app can be made in a weekend, what else is your barrier? You know what I mean? Like right now, it's just your ideas.
And if you have good ideas, which is amazing, because one of the things that I believe in the years that I've been on this earth and was able to understand why people of color have been kept into a certain box is because of the creativity scare. It's frightening. They said that we couldn't play baseball. They said that we couldn't play football. They said that we couldn't do all of these things, but once we're able to do it, and that's just in sports. But we're talking about stuff that there was just this article about an African brother who was able to do what Nakor was able to do with energy, to create a situation where you didn't need electricity to run and power things. So the creativity has never, that's Wakanda forever. That's how I see that story. How I see that, and what fascinates me about it, and with you, which is legitimizing what I see, is that, can you imagine what would have happened if there was no interruption when the pyramid, the days of Kemet? if the advanced knowledge was as what it was then, uninterrupted, you would have Wakanda and plus. I mean, if they were doing that stuff, if they could build the Sphinx, they could build the pyramids. If that had not been interrupted, where would we be now?
And that's never left us. And I grew up in New York and in New Jersey, and it's funny when I go back and I speak to people on the block there, and especially when they discover what I'm doing now, they have such great ideas. There is never a loss of ideas and innovation.
Never.
I hear the best ideas for inventions out on the block in front of the bodega, and what it requires is that extra step of like, all right, how do I take this idea into action to the next step? But those ideas are always there. I've heard some amazing ideas. My brother told me one day, he was like, how we can address energy efficiency in buildings, like in the projects, like set like hydro electricity to all of the toilets running from the top floor down to the bottom, and as the water is flowing through, is generating electricity for the building. I was like, that's brilliant. Like I'm pretty sure that exists in some kind of way. I'm sure there's a NASA patent. There's an amazing sister that runs that works at NASA. NASA's giving away patents. I'm gonna put y'all on. NASA's giving away patents for free. You go into it's called NASA Tech Transfer. You go onto this database. Any invention, you don't even have to come up with it. NASA already made the invention. They want to give it to you for free to turn it into a business, and then they take like 3% profit share of like whatever you do to turn it into a business. So nowadays you don't even need to make the invention anymore. Go grab the patent from NASA, go turn it into a business. Say your business has NASA technology in it. Go make your mill.
And not only that, create labs. If you look at their site, you got a bunch of young people that you're telling this to, yes. And what we're seeing here, and I hope people are able to see it. And if you can't see it, go to Soul City Facebook or Harlem Tourism Board Facebook or HTB Facebook, and let people understand what we're talking about here, because this is a historic issue. It's not something that a lot of people had an understanding of, but we've said you don't need to have a job. You can develop your business. You don't need to have skills. All you have to do is to be able to talk. And we know we can talk a lot. But we have ideas, whether it's the guy, the illegitimate capitalist who's the guy on the street. You can't be on the street without a brain. You got to be creative. If you had another type of lifestyle, you would be on Wall Street. But you have to be able to understand that, as Kwame Nkrumah said, you may not be born in Africa, but Africa was born in you. And the whole idea is that we're talking about the beginning of mankind in us. So that creativity, that Wakanda forever, it may seem to be fictional, but you are a fine example that it's not. You are a fine example. Create Labs is a fine example, is that it's here now. It's up to us. We can't blame anyone, which is why I wanted to have you here. You can't blame anybody but yourself. That's why there's a Soul City. You would never hear this anyplace else. You're not going to get that type of a play, because what you're talking about is something when we talk about a game changer, this is more than that. So my brother, I know that, we're moving close to our closing. I know that you had a bunch of calls that you moved around so that you can come on. I assure you, though, there's somebody that's watching this that will be able to be inspired. And if not, we'll send them and it'll be on and it'll be recorded that this is what's happening. Of course, we'll develop some partnerships and some relationships, because I believe when we combine our networks, we can find ways to begin to look at this, whether it's in health, whether it's in politics, especially in tourism, which can generate a great deal of opportunities. But thank you, brother.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And I agree. Someone out there is going to run with this. And I hope they do. And I hope they do better than what we've done. And we just laid the foundation. I hope y'all take the ball and run with it now. And, reach out and hit us up in our DMs and let us know if there's an opportunity that we could create for you.
And could you just put your website and email or website so that people, I see it there's createlabs.io. So if you come up with these ideas, now you know where to go. Twitter at create.
Instagram. I mean, I know a lot of our people are on Instagram. That's the best way to find us. Just at Create Labs, and you'll see all the things that we're doing in the community. And just reach out via DMs and say, hey, I have a certain skill. Do you have a job for me? Or I have an idea for a project. Can we talk? And we'll reach out. We always do.
Well, mine is tourism, brother. So we're going to be talking because I want to figure out how, not only that, but I also want to figure out how to connect the African diaspora, because we're going to Africa, we're going in December, and how to begin to make that connection, which is going full circle. So
we'll bring Clara. We'll get Clara a ticket.
We'll get Clara a ticket. We'll bring her to Senegal and start to try to figure out some of those things. But thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Brian. You again are the future. Create Labs. People, please support. We'll be back. I know Matt's head is spinning around and around and around, and a number of other people who hopefully will be watching this as to how we'll be able to work together. But I appreciate you. Thanks again. I'd like to give a shout out to Silicon Harlem, because they are the ones that put the foundation where all of this type of new technology can be given to the community. I was able to meet Mr. Maldonado at Silicon Harlem in the Schaumburg.
Yeah, shout out to the Schaumburg.
And was fascinated with Clara. And again, it's not enough time there's so many other questions. As you say, they were lined up with different types of questions. And at some point, maybe you can give us a tape of some of the questions. That would be fascinating too. But nevertheless, thank you.
Thank you.
Abran, I appreciate it. And we'll be back in contact. Obviously, we'll be in contact, because I'm sure that there's a lot to be done. I appreciate it.
Do it.
Shout out to Soul City that provides the platform for us to do this type of stuff. For those who celebrate, I wish you a very happy Thanksgiving. But every day is a day to be thankful. And we will be heading out to Senegal again. December, we'll start giving some reports about that. And there's a lot of things that's happening. So thank you for watching, and we'll be back next week, God willing. Take care.
This is Kia Rogers, and you're listening to Urbanology with my dad, Tony Rogers, on WHCR 90.3 FM, New York.
Urbanology.